Hey everybody. I wanted to take a moment before E3 starts. Last year I kind of did this where I talked about all the stuff coming out and all the announcements for E3 and had some fun with it. Just kind of went over, gave my thoughts. Pretty simple. Well, anyway, this time I decided instead of just waiting for the announcements, I'd go ahead and cover some of the press conferences that basically happened before E3 even started, along with covering some of the leaks and what my expectations are for this E3. If you can't tell, I'm kind of an E3 junkie, and I really love taking off and watching all the E3 stuff come around, even though E3 is not what it used to be. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and start off with some of the pre-E3 press conferences that have already occurred. So Nintendo already decided to kick everything off with a Nintendo Direct for Pokemon Sword and Shield, which also went well with the other Pokemon Direct that they had before that. Yeah, Nintendo's on a tear right now with announcements. So, exactly, they decided to give Pokemon Sword and Shield its own little Nintendo Direct, where they unveiled some of the most basic information on the game, showed some gameplay, introduced some of the characters that we're going to meet up with, and a few of the new Pokemon they have, most notably Wooloo. You're going to have to look up Wooloo, because Wooloo is the most adorable Pokemon in the history of Pokemon. You can't even argue with me, it's just adorable, you just want to hug it. So anyway, some of the new gameplay that they showcased. It seems like they're moving more towards an open world style gameplay rather than the isometric top-down style view that Pokemon's been since forever. So now they're going to have what they're kind of calling these wild zones, wild areas, which is just a large open world area in between towns and cities, kind of like what your routes and routes were in the Pokemon games. But now, instead of all the Pokemon appearing in grass, most of them just appear out in the field. You walk right into them. They're getting rid of the random battles, it seems like, which I think is a plus. I'm going to be honest with you, even as someone who's played RPGs, JRPGs all their lives, random battles gets old after a while. So, along with that, since the world's now more open, instead of having an isometric top-down view, we now have a third-person camera that we can control on our own. These open-world areas also have their own unique weather, time of day, and that will determine what kind of Pokemon pop up that you can run into and battle. Also new to the game, they have a new gameplay concept. In X and Y, they had Mega Evolutions. They added the super moves in Sun and Moon. Now they're basically combining the two for what they're calling Dynamaxing. I'm going to be honest, it kind of seems a little uninspired to me. I'd rather they had just stuck with the Mega Evolutions. That was more entertaining to me. But anyway, so with Dynamaxing, now your Pokemon becomes gigantic for 3 turns. Gets better stats, and all of its moves become now super moves. It seems like you can't use this in every battle. It seems to be mostly focused on gym battles. You can only use it once per battle, and that's about it. It's kind of an uninspired mechanic in my opinion. I would have rather they kind of rebuilt around Mega Evolutions again, because that was pretty fun. Another new thing they added, they're calling max raid battles, which everyone hears the word raid and they all lose their mind because, oh my god, raids. But it seems to be a pretty simple concept to me, what they've done. Out in the field, you'll meet a wild Dynamax Pokemon. You'll run into it. You'll be teamed up with 3 people, either over Wi-Fi or over the internet, and you'll battle this Pokemon for the opportunity to capture it. Pretty simple stuff. It doesn't sound like there's much more to it than that. So, my overall thoughts, from what I've seen, it actually looks really cool. I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't play much of X and Y, and I pretty much didn't play any of Sun and Moon. The one nice thing, they are bringing back the regional Pokemon, so like the Arctic Vulpix. So that's coming back, which I thought that was actually one of the best things they added in Sun and Moon. That was a really cool, interesting mechanic. That's coming back, but you kind of see what you get from the trailers. More open world play, your standard battling with this new Dynamax mechanic. The one thing I do like, that's I find really entertaining to me, it seems like these Dynamax battles are very popular in this particular region, the Galar region, for Pokemon. So their gym leaders and their gym leader battles are like take place in giant soccer stadiums, and you wear jerseys with sponsorships, and it's so British football to me. In fact, like, one of the main antagonists is actually like this gang of villains that they're essentially saying are just like hooligan fans for this one trainer. The trainer is like nothing wrong with the trainer. It's just like the antagonist is this gang of hooligan fans, which I find hilarious. Anyway, that pretty much covers the Pokemon one. It was pretty much minor stuff. If you really like Pokemon, you'll probably be interested. If you don't care about Pokemon, you're probably not overly interested. But I'll probably pick it up, and I'll probably like it. It comes out in November for Nintendo Switch, and I believe they're launching a double pack as well, where you can get both games for the price of both games. You're paying full price for both games. But I've heard it comes with a steel case. I know a lot of collectors, and they hear steel case, and they're like, must get. So, keep an eye out for that if you're one of those kind of people. I am, but I'm not going to get it. So, moving on to the next presser, the Google Stadia. I'm going to go ahead and throw my bias out on this early. I have zero interest in Google Stadia. I don't think the market for it is as big as they think it is, and I don't think it's going to do particularly well. But we'll go ahead and talk about it anyway. So for those of you who don't know what Google Stadia is, because it's it hasn't made a lot of big waves in the gaming industry yet, Google Stadia is Google's attempt to get into gaming. What they've done is it's a streaming service. You're going to be able to stream games onto your Chromecast or Chrome browser. And you'll be able to play those games via controller, keyboard, mouse, whatever. When I say Chrome browser, I mean like any Chrome browser. Like on your phone, on your tablet, anything that can run the Chrome browser. So, let's talk into the most important functions here. It's a streaming service for games, which means your bandwidth is going to be quite important here. So, according to their stats, you can play 720p, 60 FPS at 10 megabits a second. 4K, which is what they're really hyping, is that you can stream 4K here at 60 FPS will require 35 megabits. There's a lot to digest in just that information alone. I'm gonna be honest with you. Consistent 10 megabit FPS, like where I live right now, is actually incredibly expensive. Like, that's about $45, $60 a month. I'm not joking for those of you who live in the city. Out in these like rural regions, it's actually kind of insane how much high-speed internet costs. From what I've read, about 25% of the US has 25 megabit internet. You're not going to get the 4K streaming. I don't think the market is really there for this. If 20% of America can functionally use this product, I don't really know where the market is. But, on a side note, I do think they have a decent price point here. They're saying that their price point is going to be $10 a month, which is fair. It's going to be a subscription-based service. You're not going to be required to put down heavily on the hardware side in the long run. We'll get to the specifics on that eventually. But they're basically saying you can do 4K gaming for 4K, 60 FPS for $10 a month, rather than buying a expensive PC that can do 4K graphics. That's their selling point here. But the thing is, as they've kind of not really said what they've said, technically you won't be able to do that until 2020. If you want to get a Google Stadia service before 2020, you have to buy their Founders Edition, which is going to cost $130, come with 2 3-month subs, one for you and one for a friend. Why can't I just get a 6-month sub? You're killing me, Smalls. Their $70 controller, a Chromecast Ultra, and Destiny 2 with all DLC up to Shadowkeep, which we'll talk about in a bit. One thing I want to point out about their controller, I am so down on their controller, I don't even know what to say. So the way their controller functions is that it doesn't connect to your browser, to whatever you're actually watching the game on. So it doesn't connect to your Chromecast, it doesn't connect to your computer. It connects directly to your Wi-Fi hub, which sends the controls directly to the Google servers. So the controls you're putting into the game and the visuals that you are getting out, there's no connection here. The system for inputs and the system for outputs are on completely different wavelengths for this, which worries me like to infinity. That disconnect between the inputs and outputs is really, really worrying for me on that controller. Now, that said, you can use a conventional standard controller, play keyboard, mouse. That's fine. You're allowed to do that. I have no idea why they think putting a controller on Wi-Fi is a effective use of reducing lag and bandwidth. I have no idea, no clue. I think it's a horrible idea. Moving on, another downside. So even though you're paying the subscription, it doesn't sound like all of the games are going to be free. It sounds like you not only are going to have to pay for the subscription, you will also have to pay for some of the games. Now, it's unclear what they mean by this. Whether the majority of games are going to be full price, whether the majority of games are going to be discounted, as they've kind of led me to believe, or whether a majority of games are actually going to be free with a subscription, which is what I expected of this service. If you're paying $10 a month for this service, I'm going to be honest, I totally expect you to be able to just play these games for free. A majority of these games for free. I don't see a reason to be paying $10 a month for the service, and on top of that, still essentially paying full price for the games. That's just me. It could be that the hardware investment is such a downer for you that this makes sense. I think that's a very niche crowd that fits into that circumstance. On the game side, they showcased Baldur's Gate 3, which was a kind of rumored announcement that Lorien Games, the team that did Divinity Original Sin, they have the Baldur's Gate license, and they're going to be making a new Baldur's Gate game that takes place 100 years after the original Baldur's Gate game. I don't have much else to say about that. I actually have put very little time into Baldur's Gate. I have Baldur's Gate 2 somewhere, and I don't think I've really played it at all. They also showcased some of the first gameplay footage. Actually, was it gameplay footage? Yeah, it was. There was some gameplay footage on Ghost Recon Breakout, the new sequel to the Ghost Recon series. Not much to say there. They showed some of the unique things that they can do with Stadia, where they can do a picture-in-picture view of you and your teammates, which is neat, but beyond that, I'm not quite sure. Along with that, they showed that they have a good bit of support from Ubisoft, Square Enix, and Bethesda, which all makes sense because all three of those have a pretty good history of dumping down on new technologies very early, especially Ubisoft and Bethesda. If you've got a new and unique technology, those two are almost always willing to jump in bed with you. They were some of the first on 3D, they were some of the first on Nintendo systems. They're willing to dive in on that, and kudos to them for that, to be honest. My overall thoughts, there's still a lot of questions here with Google Stadia. I have significant doubts that this system is able to do what they say it is able to do with the given internet infrastructure that they say you need. Along those lines, they've already upped the requirements. When Google Stadia was first announced, it was essentially said that 4K gaming at 25 megabits per second, 60 FPS. I laughed at that. I thought that was absurd. And it turns out it actually was absurd because they bumped it up to 35 megabits a second, which is significant. That's not something small. Along those lines, the other thing that was really interesting about this announcement, there was like 5 fighting games announced for Google Stadia. That's what? What person plays fighting games and would play it on a streaming service? Why would you play Mortal Kombat through a streaming service? All the complaints that all the fighting game players give about input lag, and you're gonna put a majority of your games as fighting games? Are you crazy? Come on. That was just bizarre. Not to mention that the other game that they're heavily focusing on was Destiny 2, a FPS. The exact other game that everyone complains about input, just lag in their gameplay. Not so much input lag, but more just like general gameplay lag in like multiplayer. I mean, realistically, you have a shooter. Can both people shoot each other at the same time? How often do you think that really happens in real life? That happens quite a bit in online shooters. I'm not going to believe this technology until I see it. If it's not clear to you, and I'm not sure that the infrastructure exists for the technology as they promise. Now, there are some games I think that Google Stadia is actually very interesting and a good idea for. Your Baldur's Gate 3, probably the perfect example. A turn-based RPG. What does lag mean? Anyway, that's enough of me smashing on Google Stadia. I don't want Google Stadia to fail. I think it's interesting. I'm very glad that they opened up their own independent game studio. Brings a lot to the table. A lot new to the table in terms of first-party development. But I don't think the system is going to be up to snuff. At least not right now. They're investing heavily in it. Maybe sometime in the future it'll pay off dividends. I just don't think it will now. Anyway, next title. So, Bungie had their big Destiny 2 stream yesterday. Or today, I guess. Well, at the point it's at now, it would be yesterday. But anyway, I digress. So, after the Google Stadia presser, Bungie had their, I'm going to call it a celebratory presser, where they basically decided to rag on all of the people that they've worked with along the way on Destiny 2, while announcing all bunch of new stuff that they plan on doing in terms of how they plan on releasing Destiny 2 and what it's going to look like in the future. Now, I'll save that for the end, but the big thing that they're doing is they're changing their release format. Instead of having maybe an expansion, maybe a season pass, and kind of just being up in the air, they've locked it down. So now they're going to have annual expansions and seasons that you individually buy. You're no longer, well, you can technically get a season pass, and I'll get into that in a bit, but you can buy seasons a la carte. You can buy expansions a la carte. If there's content you are interested in, you can buy that content. If there's content you're not interested in, you can keep your money in your pocket. So anyway, since they're moving to this, they obviously had to announce an expansion, which they did. It is called the Shadow Keep. It launches September 17th. The main focus is going to be what was her name? Oh shoot, I've completely forgotten. It has been so long since I've actually talked to her. The Hive Lady in Destiny 1. Ellis Norn? No. Why did I say Ellis Norn? I got magic on my mind now. Alright, I'm not going to remember this. Anyway, so most of the gameplay for this new expansion takes place on the moon. It sounds like this expansion is going to be very similar to Forsaken. I don't, just kind of in the level of content that I expect to be added, I just expect it to just be another Forsaken. Also, OG Year 1 Destiny is getting a re-release and going free to play. So what do I mean by re-released? My understanding is that they're going to kind of be redoing the entrance into Destiny 2. So that way you no longer have to go through the initial Destiny campaign in order to get into the new content. You're going to have a short intro quest and then off you go, do what you will. It's actually a good idea. Get people back into the game without making them have to go through the whole story again. Get new people to come and pick out the game, because now you've made the game good since Forsaken, or as I'll technically say. Anyway, this OG Destiny is now being called Destiny 2 New Light. It's going to also, you're going to be able to still do strikes, Crucible, Gambit, and you'll be able to explore every zone released in the game, regardless of whether or not you bought that expansion or whatever. So if you have New Light, you'll be able to go to the Tangled Shore, even though you don't have Forsaken. Like I said, sounds like a good idea. Also announced, there's going to be cross-save functionality. Not cross-play, cross-save. Meaning you can transfer your character from PS4 to Xbox to PC to whatever, to Stadia freely. Do as you will. This is a good idea. This is good. This sounds like something that they've wanted to do for a while but weren't able to because of agreements that they had with PS4 and Sony for exclusive content and the like. Not to mention the fact that Sony basically poo-poos on any cross-functional technology. It's what they've done for the past year and pissed everyone off along the way. In fact, it was basically found out that Sony was in on this yesterday. That was the day it was decided. Like, day of this press conference? Yeah. Kind of last second. It would have looked really bad if they would have been cross-save play across all systems except PS4. That would have been a bad look. I think a side note on this cross-saving functionality, one thing that it will allow them to do is, should they choose, they can wait a good while on Destiny 3 and re-release Destiny 2 on the next generation of consoles. The cross-save technology will allow them to do that. They can have players move from their PS4 to PS5 just by having all of that in place beforehand. So that's one thing I kind of look forward to on this. Other side notes, the next season, which the expansion launches in, will be more focused on PvP. Which is good, because for basically the past year of Destiny 2, there's been nothing, and I mean nothing, done with the Crucible. I can't really explain it. I don't know why they have chosen to just outright ignore Crucible for a year, but that's just the way it is. Dado, the major streamer for Destiny 2, he was asking them particulars on this, and he pushed hard, but they really gave him nothing in terms of what they're looking to add into the Crucible, which typically means one of two things. One, they have a lot planned and it's in a lot of flux, so they really can't say anything. Or two, they have no plans and they are still developing them, so there is nothing to tell. I hope it's the former rather than the latter. But it also tells me that cadence is too long. They need to seriously look at PvP more often, because that's actually quite a bit of their fan base that plays exclusively PvP. There's a lot of people who play exclusively PvE. There's a lot of people who play exclusively PvP. It's something they gotta do. My overall thoughts, I'm gonna be honest, not much is actually changing here. They're essentially still doing the expansion season pass release. The only difference is now you won't have to go back and look, what content did I need to purchase in order to get this new content, with everything being standalone. That's a plus. But in terms of what's being released and the rate it's being released at, nothing's really changing. Now, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but a lot of people are hyping it up as this is a big change for Destiny, and it's not really a change. It's just the path forward looks a lot like what we've had the past year, which in my opinion isn't terrible, as long as we don't have more seasons of the Drifter, because the season of the Drifter was not very good. So, moving on to my next little segment, let's talk about some of the leaks that have already kind of come out for E3. One of the first ones that dropped was Watch Dogs 3. Watch Dogs 3 was leaked out by, I believe, Kotaku. It's being called Watch Dogs Legion. After it leaked out, Ubisoft officially confirmed it as a title that they're going to announce. They haven't said anything else about it, but they're going to show it off at their Ubisoft press conference. So it takes place in London, and it's also rumored to be in the grand history of Ubisoft making political statements, quote unquote. It takes place in a post-Brexit dystopia, which I find hilarious, and I can't wait to see what they do. For those of you who don't know, Ubisoft, despite multiple times and perpetually always saying that they don't mix games and politics, they like to mix politics in their games, particularly liberal-based politics. And to be honest, I think the games are better for it. I think it makes more interesting stories to tell. Same thing with The Division. Division often covers who owned guns when the world blew up, and is very avid in who protects who. But kind of moving on from that, the other big thing about the Watch Dogs Legion is that you're going to be able to play as recruitable NCPs or NPCs. NCPs. It's late. So that reminds me, like I believe it was Metal Gear Peace Walker, where you just kind of recruit you recruit members to your team, and you're able to play as them, and they have unique talents and skills that you can use. So, we'll see when Ubisoft has their press conferences. Also, THQ Nordic announced Darksiders Genesis, which is a Diablo-like spin-off of the series in a top-down perspective. After it leaked, THQ Nordic released a trailer for it and confirmed its existence. So you can look at the trailer if you're interested. The other thing that leaked was Borderlands 2 DLC. That's right, Borderlands 2 DLC. Titled Commander Lilith and the Fight for Sanctuary. So what happened here is, I believe at some point, like a couple hours ago, that this showed up on Steam with a release date of June 9th. What that probably means is that they're going to show Borderlands 3 during the Microsoft press conference and announce that this new Borderlands 2 DLC is out today. Those are always the best announcements, I'm going to be honest with you. Unfortunately, it leaked, so it's not much of a surprise anymore. Oh well. So, after the leaks, let's talk about some of the notable rumors that have been going around. Probably the most notable rumor has been Witcher 3 for Switch. I've seen this rumor pretty much everywhere. Apparently, the product showed up on a digital store in Europe, and it's pretty much been downhill from there. Witcher 3 is basically Skyrim at this point. It's just going to be on every system physically imaginable. I wouldn't be surprised if it comes out on Alexa. Just saying. Another rumor, Banjo-Kazooie in Smash Ultimate. So, a couple things here. The big one being, we've all been burned by rumors for Smash Ultimate before. All of us. There was one rumor that was generally accepted as true because of how well done it was, that turned out to be completely false. So, hold your salt shakers on that one. I'm not quite sure this one's actually legit. But the pieces are in place for it to be. Microsoft and Nintendo have been reportedly working together lately, really tightly. Possibly over Xbox Live functionality on the Nintendo Switch, because everyone rages about how terrible Nintendo's online platform is. But I digress, and I'm a little more off topic there on that one. The other rumor that's been going around a lot lately is that Fable 4 is going to be unveiled by Microsoft. I'm going to kind of take a step back on this one. And look more broadly at Microsoft. Microsoft has a lot to show this year. They didn't show a lot last year and kind of had an uninspired press conference, which is kind of Microsoft style. They're very boom bust. And it's mostly because their development cycles are very... Their first-party development studios tend to develop games at a very slow rate, very uneven. They tend to have development cycles that are very don't go over well. It seems to be something that comes up quite a bit. But this year they have a lot to show. They have Halo Infinite, they have Gears. I expect them to put on a pretty decent press conference this year. And having Fable 4, Halo, and Gears all in one press conference, I mean, that's like the Microsoft Trinity right there. So we'll see whether or not that comes up. I don't know. I really haven't looked too deeply into that rumor in particular, but that would be a pretty big deal considering what's happened to the studio that made Fable games. Another rumor that's unrelated to E3, but it's worth talking about. Kotaku announced that, or put out there the rumor that Blizzard has canceled a StarCraft first-person shooter game. Hey, this sounds familiar. Is there like a 5-6 year echo? I guess it's more like 13-year echo. 13-year echo in here. It wasn't there an FPS StarCraft game at some point in development that got canceled? I don't remember. I don't think that's ever come up before. Anyway, this so-called game, which was kind of supposedly like a Battlefront style game and a unannounced mobile game, were canceled, and the people working on that game are going to be moving to work on Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2. And that both of those titles will be announced at the next BlizzCon. Again, not E3, but it was kind of... The story came out at the same time as E3, so you know what, it's practically E3. So, moving on to the last part here. My predictions and thoughts about this upcoming E3. The first thing that comes up is Sony. Sony is not at this E3. That's not a good thing. I don't think that's a good thing at all, that Sony's not going to show up. It's going to be very noticeable. And it's going to be very noticeable because Microsoft is going to be at this E3, and they're going to probably kill it this year. And if they top everything off by actually showing the hardware for Project Scorpio, no, not Scorpio, I forget what they actually are calling their next-gen console. If they actually showcase that next-gen console and Sony's just AFK, that's bad. That's a bad look. I don't think Sony made a good decision not showing to this E3, even if they didn't have that much to show. Moving on, I'll try to be a little more in order here. So EA, I honestly don't think EA doesn't have much to show either. Most of their games are being redeveloped. They're just in some product development hell of an already released title. Anthem. But what they do have to show is the Respawn Star Wars game. I pretty much expect their entire presentation to basically be this game, and pretty much nothing else. Maybe highlight some new content coming out for their big games, but that's... I'm not quite sure what to expect from a company that doesn't seem to have... that seems to be putting most of its workload into titles they've already released, because they release so poorly. Next, I believe, would be Bethesda. So, Bethesda... I'm kind of surprised Bethesda's having an E3 press conference again. I don't feel like they have a lot of... There's not a lot of known titles that they have to show outside of Doom Eternal. They're not going to show Elder Scrolls 6. They're not going to show Starfield. They're still early in development on both those titles, even though Starfield feels like it's been in development for 20 years now. But they're so early in the development cycle on both of those games that they're not gonna bring either of them. So they have Doom Eternal and I don't know. So the nice thing about Bethesda, though, they're usually pretty good about not having their titles leak out. So they might actually have a bunch of titles in the works. I would think they have a Wolfenstein title in the works. I believe they did unveil one last year, but they might actually have like another title that they're working on for Wolfenstein. After that, I don't know what they're doing. Maybe they actually have a Fallout game to announce, or maybe they're just going to announce Fallout 76 again as a functional game. I don't know. So I kind of covered Microsoft a bit. Microsoft has a lot on the table to announce. And they're going to be showing a lot. I'm hoping that they focus mostly on first-party titles. It's kind of my big thing with these press conferences is don't show me third-party titles, show me what's exclusive to you. So we'll see what they do, but I think they have a lot of potential to blow up this year and be really, really good. Next would be Ubisoft, I believe. Ubisoft always has good press conferences. I'm not quite sure. They have some titles to show off that they've already kind of showed off, but in terms of probably the big stuff, if they announce the release date for their new Beyond Good and Evil, I mean that's like 20 hypes. Just be hyped for that. That's a big announcement. But that would be like the kind of big thing I expect. They might show off some other titles that they've been working on with some of their partners, like Nintendo, like they did with Raving Rabbids, and their interconnection between their model space shooter game and Star Fox. They're usually pretty tight with Nintendo, so we'll see if something comes out from that. Speaking of, well, let's not go to Nintendo yet. Square Enix. Square Enix has a power press conference this year. They're gonna blow everyone out of the. The only team that they might not blow out of the water is Microsoft, because Microsoft has the 3 biggest games in their portfolio coming out at this E3, supposedly. Square Enix, though, has an infinitely better press conference than they had last year. They supposedly are going to finally be showcasing their Avengers title. They're going to showcase the Final Fantasy VII remake that they've already shown. They have been teasing a new game called Outriders, which looks like a sci-fi title and is possibly from People Can Fly, or the devs that made Bulletstorm. It's been rumored that they have a Tomb Raider game that they're working on. And last year they showed a cinematic trailer for Babylon's Fall. We could see actual gameplay for this game. That's quite a bit for a independent publisher the size of Square Enix. So I'm looking forward to their press conference a lot, because they have some good food on the table that I'm willing to eat. And lastly, Nintendo. So Nintendo is an interesting one. Nintendo has a lot of titles, a lot of interesting titles on their plate, but it's a matter of how much and what are we going to see, and how much of it is new. I think we kind of already got a little bit of a tease of it, though, when Pokemon Sword and Shield got its own Nintendo Direct. They could not fit the information they wanted to showcase for Pokemon Sword and Shield in their E3 Nintendo Direct. That should tell you something. In terms of what we can expect to see, they have a bunch of titles coming out very soon that we actually don't have a lot of information on. Notably, Luigi's Mansion 3, Mario Maker 2, Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Like, these are pretty major titles for Nintendo that we have not really seen much of yet.
I must admit, Guardian.
And I think I've actually been confirmed that all of those titles are going to be in a playable state at E3. So we're going to learn a lot more about those games. After that, they're obviously going to show some Smash Bros. DLC. It's about the time that they would unveil the next character that they're going to show in Smash Brothers, which I said has been rumored to be Banjo-Kazooie, but we'll see. Other games that Nintendo has that we're probably going to see more of Astral Chain, that I believe it was Platinum Games title that was showcased at a Nintendo Direct a few months back. Bayonetta 3 has been absent for a while now. It's probably about time that shows up. I suspect the Earthbound-like RPG town will have an actual title and will probably be there. I'm pretty interested in that. Earthbound-like RPG. That's something that we should all be looking into. What I wouldn't expect to see is most certainly nothing from Metroid Prime 4. They already officially announced it, which that's a new experience for me. That Metroid Prime 4 was rebooted about half a year ago. It's unfortunate, but if a game's not going to be up to the standard that you want it, then albeit to reboot it and release it as quality. Nintendo's always been good about not releasing total shit games. There's one thing you can trust about Nintendo: they're not going to take a game that's total shit and hand it to you. Other things that you probably won't see, I'm 50-50 on this one. So Nintendo came out and said that they're not going to show any new hardware at E3. Maybe not official. I can't remember whether they officially said that or that was kind of unofficially said that they weren't going to show new hardware at E3. I think that's a lie. I think they actually are going to show new hardware at E3. So apparently they have two different hardware designs for the future of the Nintendo Switch. One is kind of like a mini design meant to emulate more the Nintendo DS, be more portable and handheld. That supposedly is pretty far along, and I would not be surprised if we actually do see that design. The other design that's meant to be kind of more the hardcore design and has more powerful specs and such, that one I don't expect to see, and that one apparently, I don't know what the current state of that one was. But the general thing, the miniaturized, I shouldn't say miniaturized, I don't know if it's miniaturized, but the smaller version, the more portable version of the Nintendo Switch, I actually do kind of expect to see, despite everyone kind of saying it's not going to be there. Just saying. Other things from Nintendo we can expect. Oh, that's right. We haven't seen the new Link's Awakening remake. Probably see some footage on that. In terms of new titles, okay, I would expect to see, I've got my eye on either a remaster or remake of something from Monolith Soft. Monolith Soft's kind of like the new happy child everyone loves from Nintendo. I would kill for Baten Kaitos 3. I would kill. I'm not going to get Baten Kaitos 3. But what we could get is a port of Xenoblade Chronicles X. That's kind of been rumored for a while. I don't actually think there's a lot of interest in that game. It's one of the few games, I rarely ever actually beat games. I've beaten Xenoblade Chronicles X. It's not a great game, but it is what it is. It's kind of like an open world RPG. So other than that, I think that's about it. I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover in my little pre-E3 discussion. So in leading up to E3, kind of my plans for kind of telling you guys what's happened, I'll probably do a video Sunday night that covers EA, Microsoft, and Bethesda. I'll do a video late Monday night that will probably cover up to Ubisoft. And then I'll do another video on Tuesday that will cover Square Enix and Nintendo. And I'm doing this off total memory of what the press conference schedule looks like. So you'll get a video for EA and all the Sunday stuff. You'll get a video for Monday up to Ubisoft's press conference. I believe it goes Ubisoft then Square Enix. And then you'll get another one on Tuesday that will cover Square Enix and Nintendo. So that's that. I'll go ahead and cut up this video and post up for you guys. See y'all around. Peace. We'll turn around.